You're listening to episode 159, Ryan's Story, a son with Becker's Muscular Dystrophy. Hello, my friends. Welcome to Child Life on Call. This podcast is a safe place for parents to share their stories about what it's like to have a child that has a medical experience, diagnosis, disease, and or everything in between. We know there's power in sharing stories, and that power multiplies when you can listen to other parents who have walked a similar path to yours. Giving and getting advice is great, but hearing how another parent navigates the complexities and nuances of healthcare is even better. As a child life specialist, my role is to support, validate, and provide emotionally safe spaces for kids and their families, and I am so honored to be on this journey with you. In addition to parent stories, we sprinkle in some expert episodes every now and again that have content for both parents and professionals in the field of healthcare, all with the mission to empower parents to be confident advocates and partners with the care team during healthcare experiences. We're so glad you're here. Hello, my friends. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have another dad on the podcast, and I love the energy and the vibes that dads are giving in 2023 and reaching out and speaking about their own personal experience with having a child who has a diagnosis, has gone through medical experiences, and it's just incredibly empowering. So for those of you who are listening and have a connection or a patient or know a dad who's going through something, why not share this podcast with them? These episodes specifically, we've got Travis, we've got Swap, we've got Ryan, and they're all just willing to put it out there and talk about the feelings and emotions and pain and joys and suffering and all of it that come along with their own personal journey and having a child who's been diagnosed. Today, you'll hear my conversation with Ryan, and we talked about kind of the gradual events that happened to leading to finding out that something was going on with his son, Jack. And more than that, you're going to discover how dad, Ryan, is literally finding a cure and partnering with the smartest minds in the muscular dystrophy field to find a cure. And you guys, they're getting close. So it's amazing to see what a dad like Ryan can do when he puts his mind to it. But I think most importantly, the message that Ryan sends to us today, and of course, we're all going to take different things away from it, but what I took away from it was that Ryan was an incredibly motivated person before this diagnosis, and that continues to only be enhanced by the motivation that his child brings him and that his family brings him. So I'm so grateful to Ryan for being on the podcast today, and I hope you enjoy our conversation. I know I did. So a couple housekeeping things because it is Child Life Month. I want you to know that we are giving 20% off Child Life Circle memberships. The Child Life Circle is an online community for certified child life specialists. Come on and get affordable PDUs. You can get 2 PDUs per month for just a very short price underneath $20. So if you are a certified child life specialist who has been interested in joining the community, when you sign up, use code MARCH for 20% off. And parents, we have free resources for you too. So if you go to childlifeoncall.com/parents, you will see our grandparents guide. You will see our parent starter kit, which teaches you how to talk to your kids about taking medicine and getting shots and all the things that go along with healthcare experiences. So, Ryan, why don't you just start off and introduce us to you? Tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, where you guys live, and a little bit about just kind of what life is like for you right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on. My name is Ryan Barbera. I am CEO at Data Canopy. We live in the West Friendship area of Maryland. It's a little bit outside of Howard County in central Maryland. I have 2 kids, my lovely daughter, Sophia, who is 12, going on 30, and my son, Jack, who actually turns 10. Today is the 11th. He'll turn 10 on the 29th of January. So we're planning a big birthday for him this year, which we're excited about. My wife, Tanya, is a teacher. She teaches in Montgomery County, Maryland. And life for us is very busy. We have two dogs, a new puppy. My kids both play sports. Jack is in Taekwondo and does swimming, and Sophia is a travel soccer player and sings for the Peabody Choir at Johns Hopkins. So we spend most of our time either feeding them or driving them around right now, like I think a lot of parents at this age.
Yes, yeah, yeah. I think it's like the chauffeur section of your life where you're just. My dad would always say, "I'm just the driver." That's all I do.
Absolutely. I think I'm just going to get my Uber license and pick up extra people to make some extra money while I'm doing it. So,
And the feeding thing is another thing. Like grocery bills get astronomical, and so much food required for four mouths.
Totally. Yes. Agree with everything you just said.
Well, I know we'll be chatting a little bit about Jack today and kind of how your experience was around that. And I just really want to thank you for being willing to come on and share what it's like to be a dad in this situation. We actually have a fair amount of dads on the podcast, but whenever I think parents can listen to somebody else who's gone through a similar experience or kind of had to navigate a difficult journey, it's always just nice to hear from the father's perspective. So thank you so much for being willing to speak today. And I'm excited too. I know that you're the CEO of a data company, and so I'm interested to learn how your brain works and what parts of you really helped navigate the journey with Jack. And if you wouldn't mind just telling us a little bit about kind of finding out that something was going on with him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to take a step back, I think like so many parents who have a child with any type of condition that, and if we're on camera, I'm using air quotes here, but that is not normal, right? Or different. I think that the major issue is that there's a lot of disparate information and you go down a lot of blind alleys. And so we noticed when Jack was about 3 or 4 years old that he was toe walking. And there's a condition called idiopathic toe walking, which is exactly what it sounds like, which is just that you walk on your toes, right? You learn to walk on your toes for whatever the reasons are. That when you and I learn to walk, we walk heel toe. Some kids there's something in their brain and they're not sure what it is, whether it's sensory, and they call it idiopathic toe walking. And when you go to the pediatrician tells you, hey, look, this is incredibly common. If they haven't resolved it by the age of 5, then we'll worry about it. So, this is when my son is 3 or 4 years old. Of course, 5, came and went, and Jack was still toe walking. And, in addition to that, what we were really noticing was that Jack wasn't really able to go down flat-footed anymore in the back, that his calves had, pretty significantly overdeveloped, and that he had shortening in his heel cord, his Achilles, that really was making it hard for him to go flat-footed anymore. So we went back to the pediatrician, and they sent us to Johns Hopkins. We live in Maryland, so Hopkins is a great option for us. And we went to Johns Hopkins, and we actually did a 1.5 years of physical therapy, and we weren't improving. And then we went back again, and they said, okay, well, sometimes the situation's a little bit more severe. We're still thinking it's idiopathic toe walking. Let's put him in some braces. So we went and we did braces. They call AFOs. And we had them specially made, and we were able to see Jack walk flat-footed when he was in the braces, but as soon as he came out of the braces, he was right back up on his toes. So we started going to a new therapist called New Beginnings, and these people are just absolutely amazing. I cannot say enough about them. They work with kids with all sorts of medical conditions, and the people there are just, honestly, they've just been our Sherpas in so much of this journey. But we started going there, and they said, well, look, it's idiopathic toe walking. Everything else seems to be normal. So let's serial cast him. And what serial casting is they literally put your legs in cast and adjust your feet forward to reduce atrophy effectively the calf muscle so it's not pulling as tight and stretch the foot forward. So we did that. This was right before COVID, and Jack started walking normally again. So we thought the issue was resolved. For the first time ever, Jack was really walking heel toe. And then about halfway through COVID, Jack started to walk on his toes again. And there can be, when kids with idiopathic toe walking, when they grow, there can be some recidivism in terms of going back into that toe walking. So we casted Jack again. And this time, because of COVID and other things going on, Jack was in casts for almost 9 weeks. So, twice as long as if he had just broken his leg. And again, the situation resolved. But this time, what they noticed when they were doing the casting, and just fantastic, her name's Mary Claire. She's a doctor of physical therapy. She said, Ryan, we've noticed that his muscles are recruiting differently than what we see with normal children, that his muscles are not recruiting the same way. It's very odd because even for idiopathic toe walking, he's not recruiting the muscles to walk the way that we would see with a normal child. We think you should do some testing, some blood tests, some MRIs, some x-rays. So we went and we did that. Now please remember, we started this when Jack is 3. At this point, Jack is now, let's see, this is 2020. So Jack is 7, 8 years old now. So we're like
Wow.
4+ years into this journey at this point. And so we started doing this testing. We put him under. We went and got an MRI, to test to see if it was a condition that's very rare called tethered cord. It was not that. Then we did x-rays to make sure there was nothing functionally wrong. His legs are exactly the same length, so it wasn't that. Then we were getting ready to go give him a blood test. And while this is all going on at the same time, my nephew, who lives in San Diego, gets a blood test, and it comes back that his CK numbers are through the roof. So we get our blood test, and Jack's CK numbers, which is creatine kinase. It's a protein that shows up in your blood that indicates muscle wasting. So the numbers came back, and that indicates either a dystrophinopathy, which is a muscular dystrophy, or a myopathy, which is just some sort of muscle wasting, but not necessarily a dystrophy. It can be caused by other conditions. So when it came back, both Oliver, who's my nephew, and Jack went and got genetic testing done, and the genetic test showed that they both had the markers, a very rare mutation, unknown previously, but in the Duchenne's muscular dystrophy range. But there are now 4 known people on Earth who have it, which is my mother-in-law, my wife, and my nephew and son. My sister-in-law has not been tested yet. She's getting tested, but we obviously assume she has it as well. It's genetically passed. So we were able to identify that it was muscular dystrophy. And, we started our nonprofit and started looking to find ways to help find a cure for that. So we found out it will be a year on Friday. So we found out on January 13th of 2022. And since then have been working really hard to find a way to deal with it as best we can.
Wow. It's such a unique story, and the timing of both Oliver and Jack kind of coming to this same conclusion around the same time, and your wife as well. It sounds like you were having to be in complete research and, go mode for many years at a time, just trying to find answers to get your son, to where he needs to be, where he wants to be. How did you handle the stress of that? The appointments, the constant digging and trying to find answers. How did you take care of yourself throughout that time?
I wish I could say that I actually did a better job of that. it has caused me and both my wife and I an immense amount of stress. I have worked with a therapist, both anxiety specialist as well as a grief specialist. My wife is as well. Not to overshare on her behalf, so I'll talk about myself. But I think that the reality is when it's something with your kids, all you can really try to do is cope. And, for me, coping was really two things. One was to find what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
That just to your point, unraveling that medical mystery has become a mission or was a mission in my life. And now finding a cure for it is the new mission.
Right.
But giving yourself purpose inside of that. And then really, I think admitting to yourself early on that like this is not going to be easy and that you cannot do it on your own. You need to find help, and that needs to be both the community that you're in, whether that's friends and family, as well as professional community, and meaning doctors and therapists. And for me, that was really, really important. It has really helped me to deal with what has been a lot of angst. And I think I don't know how it is for other parents, but to find out that your child has a potentially fatal condition that is progressive, that added a whole nother layer of complexity to that I really was unprepared for. I don't think you can prepare mentally for that, and I think all parents have the fear of like, hey, is this, something bad could happen to my child, right? We've all had that fear. But I think when you actually experience it, whether it's something like my son has, or God forbid, childhood cancers or other, potentially terminal diseases, you are going to be okay, but that it's also okay to ask for help and to reach out to your community. And one of the big things for me that was really hard was talking about it the way that I'm talking about it now. Like this is
Yeah.
a very recent, kind of a thing for me where I realized that my own kind of therapy was being able to talk about it and be open about it and have a communication about it that was going to be as open and as direct as I'm talking about it with you.
Yeah, that it makes a lot of sense that it took you a while to get to where you are now. It's pretty understandable. I was kind of, imagining you through this number of years when, social situations with your kids as they get older and finding common ground with others, families and friends in your community, and how it must have been difficult to know the right time to, confide in someone else. And then, you and your wife have your own relationship that you can lean on. And when you can get that other support from friends or family or community, I bet that was difficult to navigate. How much to share? Did you want to share? Could you share? And what those relationships looked like?
Absolutely. It's been very interesting because everybody has been very kind. I think that even people who don't have children have lost somebody or have gone through something. So I think everybody understands the seriousness of the situation. What I've also learned is that people don't like to be uncomfortable,
Hmm.
family or friends. And so what I've really learned is you learn very quickly who are the people that are really close to you, who care and want to be there for the journey, and those who want to write a check and not think about it again, or who want to send you one text message and say, hey, buddy, we're behind you. And, behind you means this is the text message that I'm behind you,
Yeah.
with, right?
Yeah.
And that's okay. I think I was very hurt, being very honest. I was very hurt by the reactions of some people, not immediately, but as time went on. And then what I realized is that everybody kind of has their own life, right? And this is my life with my family, and this is my journey and my son's journey, and this is going to be a journey that we go on as a family. And the people who want to be on that, I'm so eternally grateful to them for that. And the people who don't, I harbor no resentment. I think it's really like you have to do what you're willing to do. As a parent, what I have learned though is that the ones who reach their hand out and say, "Hey, I really want to help," and mean that sincerely, you need to trust them and rely on that. And I have been very lucky. There have been some people in our life, Heidi with Green Kite, who's one of our senior advisors at Strongest Hearts. Some of my coworkers who have started their own charities. Just some folks that are so unbelievable and have put so much into it. It's just been wonderful. And then I'll tell you what's actually really surprised me is there have been people who I didn't expect much from at all, who just were like, stepped up, and they were like, yeah, how can we help? Let's do this. What needs to be done to help make your life better? Jack has a friend of his whose father immediately sat down with his kids because they were his, which was some of Jack's best friends. And they were like, look, these are some of the things that Jack needs when he plays. Like, he's going to be more tired. He's not going to be as fast. He's not going to be able to do some of the things that you're doing. You never, ever make fun of him. You help him out. We stop when he needs to stop. Really explaining it to his kids in a way where it's just made it so easy for Jack to have friends. The kids on his soccer team, when Jack was on the field, with them, never complained because the parents talked to them. They didn't care if we gave up 5 goals when Jack was playing. So I think part of what I learned was being really open about it, as hard as that is. And there are some really hard moments when you watch your son struggle to do things that other kids do very easily, but being open about it, people kind of will open their arms and or be neutral. But I have received very limited, if any, negative feedback from people. Having said that, there's a lot of really hard nights where you do feel very alone because at the same time, it's like nobody understands what you're going through, right? Going back to the story of talking about how we diagnosed Jack and going through that whole thing, my son has a muscle wasting disease. I serial casted him to atrophy his legs twice. The guilt as a parent that I feel from that, took me a long time to get over because it's literally the worst thing I could have done for him. I mean, without a close second, I could have caused renal failure for my child unintentionally. Right. So I think part of it too is not beating yourself up too bad for mistakes that you made before you were able to figure out what was going on, because you just don't know, right? What you don't know. And that was really hard as well. I put Jack in a running class because at one point we thought once he was walking normally that he just needed to learn how to run again. And, was working with a trainer. And when my son was telling me I'm so tired, he was telling me that because he was tired. And, the coach was saying, hey, look, this is very normal. We got to kind of push him through it a little bit, not to the point of pain, but just,
right.
Kids get tired when they're learning to run. Well, no, my son was tired because he literally was exhausted. His muscles were saying we can't do anymore. And, I look back on that stuff and I have some regret from that. And my friends have been, going back to your question, my friends and family have been very good at helping me to kind of realize that I was really trying to do what was best for my son. I just didn't know better. And, now I do. So now we do better because we know, that kind of thing.
It's really brave of you to share that, and an incredibly common experience that helps, right? Because your intention is to help. You just want to do whatever you can. And it makes complete sense that it would take a long time to, work through something like that. And so I'm incredibly impressed by you being able to share that and talk about it so openly, because I think there's other parents who have felt that exact same way. And I can see how, a lot of people ask, what can we do to help? And you said 2 things that were really interesting to me. The first one was the people who are there and just try to make your life easier, whether it's like helping with drop-offs or pickups or appointments or groceries or lawn mowing or whatever that is. And then there's the second part where the people in your life do their best to raise kind humans that not only just tolerate people that have different abilities, but accept them and cheer them on and support them. And I think that's something that everybody who's listening can teach someone else in their life. So I appreciate you bringing up those two things. I think they're really important to note.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think we all talk about raising great humans. And, we haven't talked a lot about my daughter, but she's been amazing through all of this. As his older sister has really just worked so hard to make sure that Jack is always included. And, they fight like normal brothers and sisters do, but I've just been so proud of her, and have seen, her as she's become a young lady and moves towards becoming what is just going to be an incredibly impressive adult. Her willingness to always be there for her brother, and that's, I'm very proud of her as well. And I don't talk about her as much because she's 12, and I don't want her to feel like, this is her burden at her age.
Yes.
I want her to have as
Yeah.
much of a normal childhood as she can, but she's not stupid. She sees it, and she watches him struggle to go up a flight of stairs, and she knows Jack can't do certain sports anymore, and she's been amazing too, and that's been really important for me too.
Yeah, I think your point is when something happens to one person in a family, it happens to everybody in the family. And, that's one of the other things that I think friends and family can really help with is like throwing your arms around siblings. And they didn't get a choice in how their life is now going to be from now on. And so just, it's simple things. If one child is hospitalized, what can we do to either connect the two of them while they're not together? Or if one is struggling with something, how does that affect the other one? And just being aware of that other sibling is such an important part.
For sure. And, I was very lucky growing up. Obviously my siblings and I, outside of our craziness, we're all healthy, right? So we didn't have that. We're very close. I'm, very close with my brother and my younger sisters. And, they've been wonderful throughout this whole thing, but the dynamic was very different. My daughter has sleepovers in the bed with my son, and, hosts him in her room, and they do sleepovers together because that's kind of just easier for him.
Yeah.
And he goes on other sleepovers, but there's no pressure for him there.
Yeah.
And he can wear his night splints at night and not feel weird, in front of other kids that he has to wear his night splints. And if his legs hurt, and there's just, she's taken on a lot of that without us asking. And that has just meant the world to me.
It gives me chills to think about the kind of kids that you and your wife are raising, and just what a gift their relationship is to each other, but also to the people around them. And just the empathy that you've helped develop in your daughter is really impressive.
I don't know if it was more me or my wife, but I'll take the credit since she's not here. So.
I think that's the way it works, right?
That's totally.
You mentioned, the beginning for you was finding answers, and now it's finding a cure. And I know in addition to your day job, you've transitioned to create this nonprofit. Would you mind sharing a little bit about what you guys do there and what the intention is behind it?
Totally. And this has just, for me, been something that we're so excited about. We live in a really interesting age. And this is going to, you had asked me something early on about, talking about my job. And I have a very analytic, pragmatic brain, I think sometimes too much so. But, to me, it's not that there's no answer. It's just that we haven't found it yet, right? And I mean that universally. Like, I believe that you can always find a solution if you get the right people involved in something. And so continuing to push as Jack was going through the process of diagnosis, and now that we have a diagnosis, continuing to work towards a cure. Strongest Hearts is really just all about fundamentally two things. The main mission for us is the funding of the research, and I'll talk about that in just a second, but because that's really the main mission. The second part is about education, and it was part of why I was so excited about doing this podcast and talking about it. Is, what diagnosed my son was a simple blood test, and had we done that blood test for my son when he was 3 or 4 years old, we would have taken a very different path with Jack. And
right.
Who knows whether we'd be in the same place or we wouldn't because it's a progressive disease. But, I could have saved him 20 weeks of serial casting. I could have saved him hundreds of hours of physical therapy that was going to be not only non-effective, but potentially bad for him. There's just things that I would have done. And, candidly, I would have saved his mother and I what was years and years and years of heartache, and pain and not understanding and fear and not knowing. So the second part of what Strongest Hearts does is really to help parents understand that there are very simple things that you can go and do, including literally a single blood test that you can request from your pediatrician that will help to diagnose this condition. And honestly, if it isn't this condition, that's such a relief for so many parents, and you can kind of put it away. You never have to come back to it, because if the blood test is negative, it's not this, right? Like it's that binary. Like if the blood test is positive for these high numbers, then it's a possibility that that's what it is, or something like this. You need to do more testing. If it isn't, then it's not that, and you can head in a different direction, right? So I just want people to know that, right? Like, let me help you change the path that you may be on. The average time it takes somebody with any muscular dystrophy to be diagnosed is between 3 and 6 years. That's insane. We have to change that. Like, we have to change that. So that's the second part. And the first part is that we are working to find a cure, and we believe that cure lives inside of gene therapy. And gene therapy, CRISPR, has come so far in the last 10 years. In 2020, there was a doctor at Johns Hopkins who won the Nobel Prize for her work on working with the human genome and with CRISPR to prove that it was a path for curing not just what my son has, not just muscular dystrophy, but potentially to cure diseases like sickle cell anemia, to cure things like MS. There was just an article that came out last weekend that we're doing a blog post about the fact that they can now use CRISPR to potentially end certain types of genetically based cancers. Wow. It really, truly is the ability to take the human genome and to correct some of the mutations that happen in the human genome and to fix them. And so we are working with a firm. The doctor is based out of Boston. His company is called Huntarian, and Huntarian is focused on using CRISPR to change the way that the what they call the DMD, or the Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, which is where my son's muscular dystrophy, which is called Becker's, but they live in the same genome, to change the function of that. And for children with Duchenne's, so this will treat 90+% of kids who have this condition. If our testing is successful and we're able to get to a therapy, it will actually treat 90% of children with Duchenne's or Becker's. For children with Duchenne's, it will change the diagnosis from one where they potentially live to 18 to 25, which is the average lifespan for somebody with Duchenne's, to put them into their 50s, possibly their 60s. And with children with Becker's, it will change the lifespan from people whose lifespan become non-ambulatory in their 30s or 40s, to where they're always ambulatory and they potentially live a normal lifespan into their 70s and 80s. So, wow. This is truly groundbreaking, life-altering, life-changing, life-saving technology, and we want to help fund it. So we are doing a grant with Huntarian. This grant will go through the human cellular testing to verify that the particular application that he wants to use will work. And then it will go through specialty small mammal testing, so mouse testing. And if that testing is successful, then we will be able to effectively say that, well, of course, we need to continue to do more testing, more clinical trials. This will be preclinical, but that we can say that this methodology has been validated as a potential way to cure this disease. And because muscular dystrophy is a rare disease, we believe that it will actually be something that gets fast-tracked approval once we get to human testing. And we believe that, hopefully in under a decade, possibly even under 5 years, we would have a viable solution that could be used for kids that have muscular dystrophy.
Oh my gosh, this is insanely exciting. How did you get connected with the doctor at Hunterian?
It was very serendipitous, or whatever providence, whatever you want to call it. I have a really wonderful partner in my business. He's an investor in my business, and I had shared the news early on with him, just because he's also been a friend, and he got very quiet and said, look, I don't know how much you know about genetics, but you should talk to this doctor. He had worked at Johns Hopkins. He was a part of the team, studied under the team that won the Nobel Prize for CRISPR. He's working with MIT and Johns Hopkins today. He's out of, Cambridge in Massachusetts. You got to talk to this guy. He's just incredibly smart. And so we called him up, and he was willing just to talk to us just about our genetic results. Like, none of this was something where we were calling to see if we could find a cure. Like, very candidly, we didn't even talk about it. Once you get your results, they're genetic. So even getting the answers about what the genome means is as confusing as finding out what the disease itself is, right? So
Yes, yeah.
So he just literally took our results and was willing to talk to me about them and be like, and then found a test from NIH that matched the same types of results that we had. And this guy is just incredibly impressive, but and just so smart. And so we just started talking, and I just finally asked him. I said, look, is this something that Hunterian is willing to take on? And if so, what would that process look like? And muscular dystrophy was actually already on his website as one of the potential areas that he was interested in, and he was willing to take this on as a project with Hunterian. So it just kind of happened organically, but what was really weird about it was, again, going back to what I said before, I just didn't close any doors. I've just been very open to it. And, I coached soccer, and the girl that I coached 4 years ago, her dad runs a clinical trial company that is now specialized in clinical trials for muscular dystrophy. So I've been able to connect them with this group and to connect with other people in the muscular dystrophy community. It's, I went to a networking event where we met a guy who was a huge donor and worked with the Masons for MDA, the Muscular Dystrophy Association, who lives here in Maryland, who was looking for an additional group to work. I mean, it's just, we talked about it early on, these weird kind of spider webs of communities. And I think you just have to be really willing to go down, to mix up all my animal metaphors here, but to go down every rabbit hole, to be willing to reach these spider webs. But that was really how we found it. And I've learned a lot about CRISPR, and I have learned a ton about what that actually means. And, is this technology, something that can effectively be used for this? And, what are the risks, and why has it failed before? And that's the conversation that we're having, and why we're taking the approach that we are.
Wow. You certainly are using the gifts that you have, being Ryan, and you have the passion of your son and your family and so many others. So I cannot wait to see what happens, and whatever way we can support you. And we're just so happy to spread the message about what you're doing, but also about just appreciate how honest and candid you've been throughout this interview, and sharing what you're going through. I have one last final question, which tends to be my favorite question that I get to ask. And you're such an intelligent, smart, passionate father, but I would love to know, what else have you learned about yourself since becoming Jack's dad?
Wow. That's a tough question. What have I learned about myself? Am I that self-aware that I can answer that? So I think that, what I've learned as Jack's dad is that what you think your capacity to love is versus what your capacity I'll speak for myself, what my capacity to love, and not to pat myself on the back too hard, but there just really truly was nothing for me that I wasn't willing to do for my kids, and I think what I also learned being Jack's dad is that I needed to be much more humble and accept that I did not have all the answers, and that for somebody who has always been fiercely independent, I needed to let go, and to be the best dad to him, I needed to keep pushing. I needed to keep going forward, and this is true of my wife as well. I think I can speak for both of us, but that I also just needed to be very open to the universe, which has been very hard for me. I'm a very type A person, but I needed to be able and willing to say, okay, like, I don't have all the answers, and I'm not going to have all the answers. But if I keep pushing, the answers will present themselves, and you're going to make a mistake, but that's okay. And Jack has taught me, and this is, I say this and it sounds so cliche, it does, but I mean it with every fiber of my being. Jack has taught me that there is a level of bravery that children who are sick, they have a level of bravery that I admire and that I will never achieve. And that they are so much more dynamic, so much braver, and so much more able to deal with things than most people ever give children credit for. I mean, I have a 10-year-old son who has been serial casted twice, who has gone through hundreds of hours of physical therapy, who has been poked, prodded, goes to dozens of hours, literally in a day, dozens of hours of doctors' meetings, and will have a tear every once in a while and then get right back up and go play with his friends or go to taekwondo or read a book, or he's never sad. He never, ever, ever, ever wants something different than the life that he has. And imagine that, right?
Yeah.
So, what I've learned about myself as his dad, just that I am just so blessed truly to have him and my daughter as my children. And what I have learned about him is that he has more to teach me than I probably will ever teach him. And it sounds cliche, but I do truly mean that. It's been something for me that has taught me so much about life, and I would never have learned it had I not dealt with and been going through what we've gone through as a family.
No. Well, Jack and your entire family just sound incredible. And I thank you for being willing to share a little bit about what you guys have gone through. I know we really just did the tip of the iceberg, but I think you summed it up really well in kind of that superhuman strength that kids, whether it's your daughter or Jack in general, have, and the reflection and what it teaches us about ourselves can be a really big game changer. So I can't thank you enough. If people want to follow along with you and your foundation, how can they do that?
Absolutely. So our website is Strongest Hearts. So basically spelled exactly like it sounds, except it's .love, L-O-V-E, is our website. We do post blog posts. We just started, so those will be coming up there, and then you can follow us there on social media as well. And I really do everything through our site. That's where we do everything. One thing that I will mention is for anybody who's interested in the research, we will be posting some stuff online about some Facebook Live sessions with Dr. His name is Vinod Haskula-Ranga. Dr. Haskula-Ranga will be doing some presentations for the Becker's community on Facebook, as well as for anybody who's just interested to learn more about the research that we're doing as part of Strongest Hearts and Huntarian. So those dates will be coming up on the website as we firm them up. And then we will also be publishing some of the research as it comes along. So for people who are interested to see, how this is going, they can follow along. And any support is always appreciated. And we're very appreciative of you guys giving us the chance to do this interview today. So thank you so much.
Wow. Well, thank you. Well, literally through Jack, you guys are changing the world. So thank you for what you're doing and putting your head down. And I know it's not easy to balance all that you are, but I know so many families are grateful that you're doing what you're doing. And thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Child Life On Call podcast. The only reason this podcast keeps on going is because of you and listeners like you. So please join in on the conversation with us on Instagram, Facebook. I'm even on TikTok now, y'all, making a fool of myself. I haven't danced yet, but maybe it's coming. You can find us at Child Life On Call. We also have a website, and that has all of our information about the Child Life Circle, about the Child Life On Call app, and a blog with new information all the time. That's childlifeoncall.com. Thank you again from the bottom of my heart for listening to these episodes and being a part of this community. We are so grateful and so honored to be able to provide this for you.